So the formula for simple interest is interest equals principal times rate times time. And principal is just the amount that you invest or the amount that you borrow. And some people remember it as I equals PRT, where P is obviously principal, R is rate, and T is time. Now, I've heard people say before that this formula is near the bottom of the GED formula sheet. So if you're on the math section and you have a simple interest question and you can't find the formula, don't forget to check near the bottom of the sheet. I'm not sure if they've changed that by now, but that's what I've heard, so just keep that in mind. And for the simple interest questions, after a lot of times after students see a few examples of how to use the formula, they get pretty good at using the formula. But oftentimes the thing that people struggle with the most, which causes them to get questions wrong, is basic math mistakes. And so that's why I really want to drill into your head here that whenever you have to plug the rate into the formula, you always want to make sure that you write that rate as a decimal first. And like I said, a lot of people will figure out how to use the formula pretty easily after they've seen a few examples, but then when they get on their test, they'll kind of draw a blank and they won't remember to write the rate as a decimal, or they'll try to write it as a decimal and they'll do it wrong, and thus they'll get the wrong answer. Now, the same with the time. The other kind of tricky component that can be tricky sometimes is whenever you are plugging time into the formula here, you have to write that time in terms of years. And if you're not sure what I mean by that, don't worry. I'm going to make sure that you understand this by the end of the video. But just keep these 2 points in mind. You have to do these two things for any simple interest question. So understanding the basic and fundamental skills of math, it's so important for your test because when that time's ticking down on the test and you've got a lot on the line for your GED score, what happens sometimes is people kind of panic or their brain will just go out to lunch during the stress of the test. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen to you because it very well might not, but I just want to give you something to think about here. So you understand why I'm really taking time to drill down on the fundamental skills here. And basically, this question here that I'd like you to try to answer says, suppose Jane will earn 4% simple interest on an investment. Which answer choice shows the rate written correctly as a decimal? Now, if you don't know how to do this or if you get this wrong, don't worry about it. We're just practicing right now. But I'd just like you to try this question. And just by trying it, whether you get it right or wrong, it's going to help you understand the concept better. It's going to help stick it in your head so that hopefully when you're in the test and it's crunch time and the time's ticking down, this will hopefully stick in your brain and you'll be able to get another simple interest question right. So go ahead. This would be a good time to try to pause this and try to answer the question, and we'll go over it. Okay, so basically here, what you have to understand is that 4% written as a decimal would simply look like this. It would look like 0.04. So if you got that right, great job. If you didn't, then great job for trying anyway. If we look at B, if you thought B was the right answer here, then probably I'm guessing what you thought was that you probably were confused a little bit because you thought that 0.4 was 4%, but really 40% equals 0.4. So just keep in mind the difference here. And so on your test, I'm going to call it now. You're probably going to get a number between 1 and 19. You'll probably get something like 6%, 9%, 12% maybe. It's unlikely you would get a number as high as 40% or 50%, but it is possible. So just keep in mind if you were to get something like 60%, 40%, just keep in mind that, 40% as a decimal would be 0.4, 60% would be 0.6, and so on and so forth. But you're probably going to get something like 4%, 5% would be my guess. So just keep this in mind. Okay, so the next one says, suppose Jane will earn 14% simple interest on an investment. Which answer choice shows the rate written correctly as a decimal? So I'd like you to pause the video, try this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over it. Okay, so regardless of whether you understood this or got this right or wrong, this is a really important skill. And the reason is because, like I said, you want to always put this percent in terms of a decimal. You want to write it as a decimal. And in this case, 14% would be 0.14. If you were going to do the calculation, what you would be plugging into the formula for R would be 0.14. Now, you're not going to get a question on the test that it looks exactly like this, which answer choice shows the rate written correctly as a decimal. But you have to do this skill every time you do a simple interest question. You're going to find that rate and write it in terms of a decimal. for plugging it into the equation. So now let's suppose that Jane invests $500 for 3 months. How would you express the time as a fraction of a year? Now keep in mind here again, we're not given enough information to do a full calculation. That's not really the point here. The point is I want you to practice a part of the simple interest question, and that crucial piece is writing the time in terms of a fraction of a year. So I'd like you to pause the video, try to figure this out, and if you're just completely stuck or if you just get it wrong, don't worry about it. There's no multiple choice this time. It's just to come up with, and you can pause the video now, try this out, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so basically here, like I said throughout the video, I don't care if you got this right or not. Just by trying here, it's going to really help you remember this and really help you learn more. So a big mistake would be if you were to do a full interest calculation, to take this 3 months and to think, well, I plug 3 in here for time. That's a big mistake. What you really need to say to yourself is, okay, I'm told 500 for 3 months. Well, how many months are there in a year? There are 12 months in a year. So the fraction I have is 3 over 12. But I can reduce this because it's not in simplest form. If I do 3 divided by 3, that gives me 1. If I do 12 divided by 3, that's going to give me 4. So the fraction in simplest form is 1 over 4. And I have a whole video on simplifying, reducing, lowering, whatever you want to call it, lowering fractions. I don't want to reteach that here. But just keep in mind, technically, if you just had 3 over 12, if you just remembered that it's 3 months, I need to put that over 12, you could plug this 3 over 12 into your calculator. You could plug this into the formula for time. And if you just put 3 over 12 in your calculator, you would still get the right answer. So we're going to keep picking on Jane here, and we're going to use her as an example yet again. But this time, it's the same question, but I've changed it to 6 months now. And so if you got that last question wrong or you struggled with it, this is your chance for redemption. If you got that question right, then don't feel like you're just repeating basic things over and over again for no reason. Again, it's one thing to be able to get questions right or get basic stuff right when you're just practicing, but it's another to sometimes when the time's ticking down, you have the stress of the test there, you've got a lot on the line. It's another thing to remember how to do basic skills when you're in a testing situation. And I'm not saying that you're going to struggle with basic stuff when you get into the test. We don't know that yet, right? I don't want to assume that, but I'm just saying I've seen it happen before. So I just want to throw this out here to just really hammer home why we're practicing these basic skills. Because when you get into that test, I don't want you to struggle and stumble on basic math things. Because these simple interest questions, if you struggle with math and math is not your strong suit, simple interest questions are really something that can help your score if you get these on your test. So I really want to hammer the basics home here. So that being said, the next question is, suppose Jane invests $500 for 6 months. How would you express the time as a fraction of a year? So let's have you pause the video, try this out, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so basically, note again here that if we were given enough information to do the calculation, just plugging 6 in for time would get you the wrong answer. What you would need to do is you would need to remember that there are 12 months in a year, so you would do 6 over 12. And again, if you were to just plug 6 over 12 in for time, you would get the right answer. All right, if you were going to simplify it, you would just divide the top number and the bottom number by 6, and that would be half. Would be the simplest form. Okay, this is what we've been working towards. This is a question that is of similar difficulty to what you could expect on the test. Now, we're still going to keep picking on Jane here, and in this case, Jane borrows $700 for 8 months at a 9% interest rate. Find the interest on the loan, and I've given you A, B, C, and D. So pause the video, let's have you try to figure this out, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so I just want to keep emphasizing here that right now, it's all about that process. Whether you get the questions right or wrong, that matters on your test, but for right now, it's all about the process of getting better and improving. And what we're being asked to find here is the interest on the loan. All right, so I'm going to use the formula, obviously, I equals PRT, and I'm going to take 700, and I'm going to plug that into the formula for P. So hopefully, even if you had trouble with this, hopefully you saw that much. So we've got 700. And now the question is, what am I going to plug into the formula for R? Well, I have this 9% here, and
remember, I have to take that 9% and I have to write it as a decimal. And when I write 9% as a decimal, I plug in 0.09. So I'm willing to bet that someone out there watching this, maybe you, put in 0.9. And just note that if you did that, it's okay because we're just practicing, but you want to know that 9% is equal to 0.09, not just 0.9. So if you made that mistake, don't worry about it. I just want you to know for your test, and if you got that right and you put in 0.09, then congratulations, good job. So now let's talk about T. So for T, what we want to look at is we're given this 8 months. So a big mistake would be to just take this 8 and plug it in for T. So really what you want to do, and if you made that mistake, then I want you to listen up very closely here because I want to show you how to do it right. If you did that, you just thought you were going to plug in 8, then what you really want to do is remember that it's 8 over 12. If it said 8 years, you would simply plug in 8, but it doesn't say that, it says 8 months. So since it says 8 months, you have to do 8 over 12. And if you stopped here and you just put in 8 over 12, then you would still get the right answer. But every GED textbook that I've ever taught out of, for some reason, they always tell you to simplify it here. So we're going to do that. And to simplify this fraction, you would do 8 divided by 4 and 12 divided by 4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So the simplified fraction is going to be 2 over 3. And again, technically, if you just put in 8 over 12, you get the same exact answer, but all the textbooks really harp on simplifying it first when you do these simple interest questions, so I'm just going to teach you how to do that. But basically, so if I put this in my calculator, I would do 700 times 0.09 times 2 divided by 3 equals 42. So B is the correct answer here.
So Jane's back at it again here, and this time she invested $1,700 for 4 months at a 10% interest rate. How much interest did she earn on her money? And so this time it's just, we'll have you come up with the answer yourself. There's no multiple choice here. So let's have you pause the video, try this out, and let's see how much interest Jane is getting on her money this time. Okay, so basically, what you want to do here is you want to, first of all, take the 1700 and you're going to know that that is going to be plugged into the formula for the principal. So the interest equals 1700 times the rate times the time. And the rate, since it's 10% interest rate, 10% written as a decimal is just 0.1. And for the time here, it's 4 months, so it would be 4 months. It's 4 over 12. And if you do what the textbook tells you to do and you simplify this, you would do 4 divided by 4, which is 1, 12 divided by 4, which is 3, and you would get 1/3. And again, as I've said once, I'll say it again and again and again. If you just did nothing else but take this 4 and put it over 12, and instead of writing 1/3 here, if you just used the 4 over 12, you would get the same answer. But for some reason, the textbooks want you to roll with the simplest form. That's what they teach, so that's what I'm teaching here. I'm not sure that it's really going to make your life that much easier if you simplify it, but that's what the textbooks say, so that's what we're going to roll with here. And so using the calculator, well, my phone is really my calculator today, but what I get is 56.67, something like that. If you round it, I don't really care how you rounded it, as long as you got something like 56.67, then you got the right answer. So Jane has more money than she knows what to do with, so this time she's going to invest $1,900 for 2 months at a 20% interest rate. And wherever Jane lives just has a constantly fluctuating interest rate because now it's at 20%. But anyway, we want to figure out, again, how much interest did she earn on her money. So let's have you pause the video, try this one out, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so basically, similar to the last couple questions, I is equal to PRT, and I'm going to go over this a little faster because hopefully you're starting to get how to do these now for the basic cases like this one. But 1900 is going to be the principal, and for the rate, what we're going to do is we have to remember that it's 2 over 12. And a thought just occurred to me that if you're asked to do a simple interest question without being able to use your calculator, if you're new to the GED, just understand that the first handful of questions on the test will be no calculator questions, and for the majority of the test, you can use your calculator. So if you were to get a no calculator simple interest question, then you would definitely want to simplify it. That would probably make your life way easier. So maybe the textbooks say to do it this way because on a no calculator question, it's a lot easier to work with 1 over 6 as opposed to 2 over 12. That might be why, so it's good to know how to simplify it because it's just going to make life probably easier for no calculator questions, but for questions that you can use your calculator, technically, if you just plug in 2 over 12, I think it's just as easy as doing 1 over 6, but it's up to you to make that call. So I'm just going to show you with plugging in 1 over 6 because that's what the textbooks say, so, we'll just roll with that here, but basically, that would be the time. And the rate this time, it's 20%, which as a decimal is 0.2. And so for the time here, we just figured out it would be 1 over 6. Now, I just want to point out here that, like I said, more than likely for the rate, you're probably going to get a number between 1 and 19, I would imagine, but it's important to know how to do it if you do get a 20 or you get a 40 or a 50 or something like that. So for 20%, it's just 0.2, and it is fair game for them to give you a number like 20%, so you would have to know that that's 0.2, but by my own guesstimation here, you're more likely going to get something between 1 and 19 for the rate, but it just depends on how you roll the dice, I guess, or how they roll the dice, I should say. So 1900 times 0.2 times 1 over 6 is 63.33, so this time, Jane is going to get 63.33.
Okay, so this time we're going to talk about the other type of simple interest question where you're going to be asked how much must be paid back. So Jane is back at it again, and this time Jane borrowed $1,200 from her friend and plans to pay her back in 6 months. If she pays 9% interest on the loan, what is the total amount she will pay back in 6 months? So this is a little bit different. I'd like you to pause the video and try this out. And if you get stuck, this is something new, so don't worry about it. I'm going to teach you how to do it, but I think it's going to help to try to figure this out first, and then we'll go over how to do it. So I'll let you do that now. Okay, so basically, we're going to start off by first figuring out the interest, and then we're going to add that to the principal at the end. So to calculate the interest, and I'm going to go through this a little faster because it's the same as in the other examples, the same method anyway, but 1200 gets plugged into the formula for P, and for my R, which would be rate, we have to understand that 9% is equal to 0.09 as a decimal, and so for the time, it's 6 months. So for the time, we're going to do 6 over 12 because it's 6 months. And to simplify this down, it would be 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So half would be the simplest form of the fraction that needs to go into the formula for t. So let's run this in the calculator or phone calculator, whatever you're using today. And so I get 54, but 54 isn't the answer to the question. 54 just tells me the interest, right? But we need to know how much she will pay back. What is the total amount she will pay back in 6 months? So basically, we have to look at how much did she borrow initially, or how much was the principal, in other words. It's $1,200. And we know that the interest is $54. So the total that she pays back is going to be $1,254. So whenever you see a simple interest question that has something to do with payback, if it says payback or something similar in that question, remember that you're going to calculate the interest and then you're going to add that to the principal.
So that should cover everything you need to know to get the majority of simple interest cases right. If for some reason they hit you with a curveball and give you some really crazy variation of a simple interest question, just reason your way through it based off of what you learned in this video, and you should still have a great shot at getting that question right. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck.